Be strong.
Lloyd Frontera responds, expressing excitement, and proceeds to throw a meteor onto the building, laughing. Javier looks at him, questioning why he is being observed like that. Javier comments that he definitely did not think he was a crazy individual. He retorts, confirming that Javier indeed thought of him as such. Javier then informs that Corgidus and the 30 dwarf artisans under him have arrived. He responds with appreciation, thinking about the significance of cement in determining an apartment's durability. He reflects on the complexity and detail required for constructing an apartment, unlike simpler structures such as roads or suspension bridges, emphasizing that a random approach won't suffice. Meanwhile, he proceeds to meet Corgidus and his 30 dwarves, offering greetings. He contemplates that what they currently require is a concrete mixer truck and proceeds to show them the blueprint structure of the mixer. He considers this equipment crucial in the apartment construction project as it prevents the cement from hardening or breaking apart. Corgidus, however, criticizes him as an ill-mannered fellow, questioning if he seriously expects someone who has traveled a long way to work immediately without even offering a bowl of soup. He responds by stating that he did consider how to welcome Corgidus and thought extensively about it, concluding that the best welcome would be a blueprint that he has never seen before. Corgidus acknowledges the idea but questions whether he really needs to smile like a con man. Corgidus adds that he has prepared a proper workplace and proceeds forward, while Lloyd Frontera bows and agrees, stating of course. He thinks that, finally, the long-awaited construction is beginning. He starts digging and instructs him to blast it up, contemplating the foundation work and the operation of the Pipodong-driven concrete mixer truck. Pipodong runs in the wheel of the mixer truck to mix the cement, while orc warriors fold iron rods. He contemplates the preparation of rebar, or the casting filling of cement, stating that he can't pour it all in at once. He advises starting at the edges, pouring where the rebars are connected, and ensuring there isn't any air in it. As the difficulty increases, they plan to use the life-sized crane, Bai Beong, to transport a tray of cement boxes and tiles to the top of the building. He thinks of encouragement and calls Bangle over. When Bai Bayan looks at him, she blushes and becomes happy. Lloyd Frontera stands there with Baron and expresses confidence in him to complete the task. Baron replies not a problem. He thinks that since they have become familiar with other tasks, he should start working on the problem of insulation for heating facilities. He contemplates that Honey Apartment's heating system relies on a coal-driven steam kiln, and the central heating room will boil water and discharge steam through pipes. He considers that, after traveling through the pipes, the steam will be released in various places, connected to radiators to heat up the rooms. The problem, he notes, is that the higher the levels, the more heat they lose, with the 8th floor experiencing almost zero heating. He reflects on having tried all available insulating materials in simulations, all of which failed. Spending nights researching the issue, he wonders if it's possible to create better insulation materials, and if the novel contains any useful information that could assist in solving the problem. After a while, he sits in his room and writes something, thinking this is the chapter where Javier fought a dragon. He observes the dragon roaring, questioning how a mere and weak human could dare to fight with him. He wonders why every fantasy story contains lines implying human inadequacy. Despite being a sword master, he considers that Javier is still too weak to fight a dragon. Javier takes the full blast of the dragon's breath and remains unfazed as the dragon throws fire on him. This resilience is attributed to Javier wearing armor made from the hardened sap of the Alencia tree, considered the strongest insulating material in this world. They both notice the Alencia tree and move forward. Javier remarks that it's been 2 days since they set out and inquires about how far they are going to get the insulating material. Lloyd Frontera responds that they are heading to the Everglow forest, where the elves live, to extract the Alencia tree's sap. He then asks Javier about his destination. Javier asks if he doesn't know that elves hate humans and are a race that's impossible to negotiate with. Despite being the one who flirted with an elf and received a piece of armor in the novel, he responds, saying all right, go back by herself, then escort Knight. Javier notes that elves are a race that no one has approached in 500 years and questions how he intends to persuade them. He further inquires about what persuading them means, leading to repeated back and forth questioning. He declares that there might be a mistake, stating that he doesn't engage in persuading others. Instead, he plans to steal from them. This revelation prompts Javier to express a desire to beat him to death. Lloyd, Frontera, and Javier walk into the Everglow Forest, and Lloyd mentions that in a few more steps they'll be in the Everglow Forest, connected to the elves' forest by a nerve network, so they need to be quiet. Javier sneezes due to little fairy plants touching his nose. Lloyd asks what he just did, and Javier responds, asking if he is a fool and if Lloyd knows what a sneeze is. Lloyd replies that of course he knows, but he's asking why Javier is acting all cool when he's just sneezing, claiming it's a misunderstanding. Javier retorts, stating that everything he does looks cool because he has a handsome face, something Lloyd may never understand. Lloyd thinks to himself, realizing that Javier truly meant what he said. The system notifies Lloyd of a sense of shame with damage plus 99 and laughs. Lloyd thinks to himself to shut up and that he'll really kill Javier. Meanwhile, he asks if he isn't a sword master, and if a sword master can't hold in a sneeze. Javier replies that it's impossible to control certain physiological phenomena. He responds that he can't hold in his bodily functions forever, to which Javier replies, questioning why he would do something that could cause constipation. He taunts that a sword master is so lame that he can't even hold in his bodily functions and laughs. He becomes angry and repeatedly punches Javier, who manages to block all the punches. The system notified that Javier was genuinely happy. He instructs Javier to hold in his sneeze and be quiet. Javier responds, requesting him to be quiet. He explains that they need to reach the center of the forest, where the Alencia tree is nearby, just as a group of elves arrive and point arrows at them. He becomes scared and questions how they realized they were there so quickly. Muera exclaims why the hell wouldn't they realize after he made such a big fuss at the entrance. What an idiot. Javier acknowledges that the situation isn't good. He refuses to comply, stating that things have just progressed faster. An elf announces that they'll fire in 3, counting down and shooting fire arrows at them. In response, they attempt to escape the attacks, and Javier skillfully cuts the arrows with his sword. Muera observes that Javier is a sword master, while Lloyd Frontera runs to evade the arrows. He suggests splitting up as planned and rendezvousing at the Alencia tree in 30 minutes, noting that he'll be easily visible from a high spot. Javier expresses concern, asking if he'll be all right alone. Lloyd Frontera reassures him, stating that he'll be fine as long as he attracts their attention. An elf comments that the ugly man is just a distraction, instructing others to chase after the handsome man. The elves run to attack Javier, who counterattacks in response. Elves jump easily from plants, moving here and there, while Javier contemplates that there isn't much information about elves, but it seems Master Lloyd is right this time as well. He recalls Lloyd Frontera's explanation that elves love plants and use a special type of footwork because they don't want to harm plants. He realizes that it wouldn't be right to attack these innocent elves, so the best course of action is to run as fast as they can while avoiding the attacks. They should be able to do that by leveraging the elves' love for plants. The elves attack him from all sides, and Javier attempts to escape, finding it challenging to dodge the attacks, even though they only come from 2 directions. He tries to hide behind a rock, realizing that they are intentionally driving him somewhere. Lloyd Frontera reaches the Alencia tree, activating his upgraded energizer. He thinks that with this upgrade, he won't get tired for 20 minutes. He starts digging quickly, going underground. Javier looks at him and finds it strange, while Miria thinks she doesn't see the captain who was at the forefront just now. Javier runs towards him and thinks not to tell him that she went to Master Lloyd. He runs quickly into the water, realizing there aren't any plants here that he can use to stop their attacks. He swiftly stabs his sword in the water, effectively blocking all their arrows. Miria asks about the extraordinary power, and another elf remarks that the human could kill them if he really wanted to, instructing everyone to calm down. She points out that while the humans might have a sword master, they have Melika. Javier looks around, trying to understand why they have stopped attacking. A giant elf, Melika, arrives, placing her bow on the ground and aiming her arrow towards Javier. The system notifies him about the dragon hunter bow dragon sniper, and she throws her arrow toward Javier, who attempts to block it with his sword. Javier attempts to block the arrow, finding it challenging, and maneuvers behind while continuing to block. He marvels at the incredible strength, realizing that she is overpowering his aura sword with just arrows and raw strength. Reflecting on Master Lloyd's warning that harming even one elf could lead to all the elves seeking revenge, he acknowledges their killing abilities surpass the orcs. Javier concludes that it's time for him to join forces with Master Lloyd. Contemplating that some elves might have gone after Master Lloyd, he wonders about actions he can take to help Master Lloyd without harming any elves. As arrows rain down towards him, he shouts and utilizes all his powers to block every arrow. Melika throws another arrow at him, and he blocks it, sending it back with his powers. Melika throws yet another arrow, and this time both arrows block each other. Meanwhile, Lloyd Frontera gathers Alencia tree roots from underground, contemplating that he'll take one more that's around this size. An elf warrior appears from behind, pointing an arrow towards him, and accusing him of being a devil for cutting the roots of precious plants. Lloyd Frontera calmly replies, requesting their understanding, as he also has many lives depending on him. Miria shouts at him not to move, warning that he'll be pierced full of holes if he does. Lloyd Frontera responds that they can shoot him if they want to, but he'll burn them up slowly. He holds a pot containing a baby plant that sobs, identified by the system as a mandragora he picked along the way. Observing this, they become worried, while he smiles and suggests that if they don't want it to be in pain, they should move backward. They express disbelief, questioning if he's even human, calling him despicable trash and a filthy villain. Lloyd Frontera casually replies, acknowledging their words as compliments, and instructs them to start moving backward now. Miria shouts that he is an ugly freak who isn't popular with women, finding him annoying. She points her fire stick toward Mandragora and orders everyone to move backward, and they comply. One of them suggests calming down, stating that this is the end, and proposing to talk now. Lloyd Frontera becomes irritated, eats Mandragora's leaf, and screams for them to just kill him instead. He feels bad because of his saliva and instructs them to go up and climb up. They agree, saying all right, they are going up. Mandragora tells him to stop doing that and abuses him. They exit the hole, and he also emerges while still holding the leaf in his mouth. He thinks that now that he's outside, Javier should be able to spot him easily, and he should be here now if the other elves see him doing this crazy thing first. An arrow comes from behind, hitting the pot of Mandragora, causing it to fall. Lloyd Frontera believes it's game over for him, but he still holds its leaf in his mouth, preventing it from falling. His saliva covers half of Mandragora's body, irritating it. Miera asks what's wrong, while another elf mentions feeling queasy and lightheaded due to getting nervous just now, witnessing such a horrifying sight. Miria shouts for everyone to hang in there, emphasizing that they mustn't show weakness to a plant murderer like him. She then hears growling sounds from her belly, falls down and mentions feeling unwell inside. Her two partner elves hold her, and one of them encourages her to pull herself together. Lloyd Frontera wonders what's happening and recalls that the elf's eyes looked hollow. He notes the absence of any sounds of birds chirping or animals in such a thick forest, not spotting even a rabbit or an elk. He considers the possibility of the monster Domino being present. He observes that all the monsters have moved to the end of the mountain range, leaving the middle Everglow forest empty, and concludes that elves will never harm plants in any way. He contemplates that this indicates elves are strictly carnivorous and wonders how long they have been starving. On the other side, elves continue to attack Javier, and he finds it strange that, with their physical abilities, they shouldn't be this tired already. However, he believes that right now it should be possible for him to force his way through them. Using his mana powers to attack, he thinks here he goes, while Melika throws another arrow towards him. He worries about Master Lloyd's whereabouts and hopes he is safe, even as he gets injured. Javier runs quickly to save himself, while the squad leader shouts that he has broken past their encirclement, instructing her subordinates to go after him. However, her subordinates are tired, and some fall onto the branches of a tree. One of them informs the squad leader that they can't go on anymore, and another elf mentions being too hungry to move. Frustrated, the squad leader calls Melika, stating that she is the kind-hearted Melika who shares her own portion of meat. Not only that, Melika has decided to fight to the end while continuing to engage with Javier. She pushes him back and attempts to stab him with a giant arrow, but he manages to escape in time, causing her arrow to hit the rock. Javier thinks about the person he needs to protect, his lord's son, while Melika attacks him again, throwing him away. The squad leader instructs everyone to squeeze out every last bit of strength they have and orders them to support Melika with their arrows. Meanwhile, Javier searches for the savior of their barony, determined to protect him. The squad leader describes him as a monster, and Nuera mentions the footwork that took them 100 years to learn, all while many arrows come toward him. Javier says he needs a little more to move forward. Melika points two arrows together toward him as he notices the Alencia tree and shouts for Master Lloyd, who he sees cooking something. He asks what happened to him and questions if he just fought a war, observing his worse condition. Master Lloyd addresses the elves, stating that some are overcooked, urging them to eat quickly, and others are not cooked yet, emphasizing that pork has to be cooked until crispy. One elf comments that it is tasty, and Master Lloyd looks at Javier, inviting him to come and take a seat. Javier comes and sits with the elves, introducing himself as their escort knight. When Javier replies that he is not a servant, he refuses. Javier informs them that Muera is the tribe chief, to which Muera says it's nice to meet him. Javier encourages her to be more friendly in her greetings, asking if she's seriously so unfriendly. Muera asks if there's space for one more person, and Javier replies affirmatively. Miria calls for Melika to come over while she hides behind a tree. Miria mentions that she's very starved and asks if she can eat all she wants. Javier responds that they can eat whatever is available, but there's not a lot since they are only packed for traveling. He adds that those with their bows drawn will probably be satisfied with just smelling the food. She eats meat and comments that the male elves who do house chores while waiting for female elves to succeed in their hunts must be really hungry. Muera and another elf become emotional, hugging each other and saying, "Darling, don't cry, hold it in." He inquires about the young elves and wonders how long the elderly elves can hold out. He predicts that they'll probably be the first to starve to death, likely the first to return to Mother Nature without anyone knowing, and they'll simply hold back their tears, becoming emotional. All elves hug each other and become emotional while he proposes making a deal. Muera says they don't make deals with mere humans. He laughs, asking what she is talking about, and says they have already made deals, pointing towards the pot of mandragora. He says that when the elves went backward because of hunger, and now she's talking to him because she's hungry and has eaten meat, if these aren't deals, what are they? He says alright, he'll first tell her what he has to offer. It's survival. She asks what's meant by survival. He says unlimited pork meat and coal for her to cook their meat with, and thinks coal is technically made from trees, so they probably won't like the idea of it, but he'll refrain from telling them this, thinking about information asymmetry. He says all she has been eating are jerkies that have dried up, but she'll now be able to eat sizzling juicy pork. He says he'll provide her with a siak bingo that will help her preserve meat and keep it from spoiling. Muera asks what he wants, and he replies he wants to survive as well. If she doesn't agree to this, all the children on their side will also freeze to death helplessly. He states that they only need the sap of Alencia once a month, just a small portion of it. If she gives them that, no one on their side will die. He also mentions that he will tell her how to extract the sap without hurting the tree. Additionally, he suggests that it would be faster for the elves to transport the meat if they split around 100 elves into two groups. One group would assist in transporting the meat, and the other would help in building their house. He inquires about her thoughts on this idea that could benefit both sides. Melika responds, advising Chief Muera not to agree. She asserts that humans are always full of lies. Recalling her mother's advice, Melika recounts that her mother once lived in a human place known as Gapel on an exchange with them. Due to their short lifespan, humans try to enjoy life as much as they can, which is why they may become greedy, lie, and commit atrocities. Melika believes that Muera should only trust humans if she believes they can become true friends. Returning to the present, she firmly states her refusal, explaining that she will only make deals with a human who is a genuine friend. Chief Muera realizes that it's a tough obstacle to overcome. Lloyd Frontera contemplates the meaning of friendship, reflecting on his past in the other world where he was consistently alone, filthy, unattractive, and impoverished. He recalls joining the traditional building research club driven by a desire to learn, aware that others were mocking him behind his back. He wonders why he always appears so pathetic, lacking even 3001, and laments that his perpetual financial struggles disrupt the atmosphere. Despite these challenges, he grits his teeth and endures the insults, aiming to acquire more knowledge that will eventually lift him out of poverty. He envisions a future where he can utilize this knowledge to improve his circumstances. The story shifts back to his real-world life, and he sits with a friend at the dining table. The friend advises him not to take what others say to heart, as he has better results and is more active in activities. Soo Ho responds with gratitude, and the friend dismisses the need for thanks, asserting it's just facts. He assures that the food will be a pleasant surprise, praising the restaurant's excellent beef. Lloyd Frontera moves a bite toward his mouth and expresses his thanks. The friend encourages him to eat as much as he wants, highlighting that the only meat he can afford is canned tuna. Lloyd Frontera looks at his friend, recalling the condescending eyes and the disgusting smile, feeling a momentary happiness. He reflects on being perceived as a charitable person for feeding what he metaphorically describes as a filthy dog. He tears up, savoring the deliciousness of the charity received. Acknowledging his friend's kindness, Lloyd Frontera asks if he can eat 2 more portions, to which his friend generously suggests 3 more portions. This marks the beginning of their friendship, as Lloyd Frontera realizes that this guy is a good person. The story returns to the world of Lloyd Frontera, where he contemplates that there's nothing extraordinary about friendship, and he decides to express his appreciation by buying beef for his friend. He retrieves a piece of meat from his bag with a clamp, displaying a sticky expression. Muira observes the meat, noting its different color and strange brilliance. Lloyd Frontera moves the beef piece toward them, and as they eat it, they become emotional. Muira expresses her acceptance of his deal. Another elf inquires about approval from the Elder Council, to which Muira humorously suggests feeding them beef. The system window reveals that the elves of the Everglow Forest, who had not engaged in contracts with other tribes for 500 years, have now signed a business agreement with the humans of the Frontera Barony. Javier reflects on the simplicity of solving problems with beef and questions his own necessity in the situation. They proceed to the town. An individual spots Lloyd Frontera and inquires about his identity. Another person explains that he previously convinced the orcs, and now the elves are on board. There's speculation that, at this rate, he might even bring dragons here. The skeptical person questions how he could achieve such a feat. Muira contemplates the prevalence of items made from harming plants, finding it cruel now that she sees it up front. Lloyd Frontera points out the diverse values held by different tribes, races, regions, and small organizations. He emphasizes that cooperation entails compromising on some of those values, and he believes that's where a world benefiting everyone begins. Muira acknowledges understanding this concept intellectually, but expresses hesitation in her heart. Lloyd Frontera agrees, stating that she'll need time, and encourages her to contemplate it slowly while enjoying some beef. She agrees, noting that she thinks she understands it now. After a while, Lloyd Frontera is at the construction site, contemplating the ongoing construction of Honey Apartment Buildings 101 and 102. One of the concerns he had before leaving for the Everglow Forest was whether these 2 buildings would be completed before the temperature dropped to sub-zero and the freeze-thawing phenomenon occurred. He reflects on the potential issue of water in the concrete freezing during sub-zero temperatures, leading to melting later, likely when winter is over, and if this occurs, the numerous water droplets inside the concrete could become impurities, resulting in a disaster. He notes that he no longer needs to worry about that now. The elves are efficiently working on the construction site, and Muira suggests finishing the work quickly and enjoying some beef. The others agree in unison. Lloyd Frontera explains that the construction progressed at a much faster pace than expected, thanks to the elves' crazy speed and mobility. Consequently, the first snow of winter marks the completion of Honey Apartment Buildings 100 and 102. He reflects on beta testing these 2 buildings throughout winter, aiming to have them ready to accommodate everyone by the next autumn. The crux of the beta test lies in the adiabatic material made from Alencia essence and soybean oil in a 1:100 ratio. A worker paints the pipe, while another reports the completion of installing insulation pipes from floors 1 to 8. Lloyd Frontera approves, instructing them to go down and start up the boiler. The boiler is started, and they all sit inside, experiencing a sense of relaxation. Lloyd Frontera acknowledges it as a great success and instructs everyone to prepare for moving people in. Javier begins to discuss the priority for moving in, but Lloyd Frontera interrupts, mentioning the ongoing snowfall and his current busy state. He decides to talk later and calls Sir Baron. Lloyd Frontera conveys to Baron that the priority for moving in should be families with children, followed by the elderly and the sickly. Within these categories, further priority should be given based on their health conditions. Baron confirms his understanding. Lloyd Frontera adds that those unable to move will be accommodated in the single ondals that were built, emphasizing the importance of ensuring no one goes hungry or cold. He believes that only then will they owe them a significant favor, making it easier to engage them in work. Lloyd Frontera moves with Javier, holding his shovel, and suggests visiting the Baron, as there is still more work to be done in winter. Javier finds him annoying and contemplates hitting him. As he reflects, he realizes that Lloyd Frontera has been acting this way since the day his personality changed, and he can no longer dislike him. He recalls that Lloyd Frontera has even managed to get everyone around him to rely on him. Lloyd Frontera, hearing a trumpet sound, asks if it is not the Empress's royal messenger. His response confirms that it is indeed the Empress's royal messenger. Meanwhile, the royal messenger arrives and Erox Frontera and Marbella Frontera kneel down in front of him. He opens a scroll and expresses amazement at the Frontera barony's initiative and exemplary actions in recent events. Acknowledging their contributions, he issues a royal order promoting the Frontera barony to a county from the moment the order arrives in the Frontera region. Lloyd Frontera echoes the same sentiments. The royal messenger, in turn, kneels down in front of them and extends congratulations. Erox Frontera and Marbella Frontera become emotional. The royal messenger enumerates the Frontera barony's contributions, highlighting their success in halting the large-scale monster invasion from the east as the first accomplishment. The second contribution is acknowledged for protecting refugees from the eastern region who lost their homes, and the third contribution involves rebuilding the eastern region and transforming it into a fortress. Following these achievements, Frontera County will now gain independence from Cremo County, and Lloyd Frontera will be entrusted with the task of rebuilding the east. Additionally, the imperial family committed to providing the budget and materials required for the East's reconstruction over the next 10 years. Furthermore, Frontera County will be exempted from paying taxes to the imperial family for a period of 20 years. Lloyd Frontera raises his hand to cheer for their empress, declaring the empress's long life and acknowledging her exceptional generosity. He reflects on the almost impossible task of manually constructing a huge city in this era, recognizing that the empress is placing a significant bet on their capability to achieve it. He instructs Javier to accompany him to the village, stating that he has something prepared for this moment. He announces that all territories bordering the east, including the Lacuna Viscounty, will now fall under the administration of Frontera County. As Arcos Frontera watches him leave, he becomes emotional, attributing all the positive changes to him. Not only did he rescue them from their debt, but he also elevated their barony to a county, considering him a miraculous figure. Later, they all gather around the Queen's statue, dancing, raising cheers for her, and expressing wishes for her long life to unite the world. Lloyd Frontera encourages them to shout louder so that it reaches Queen Alicia Termina Magentano. They collectively repeat their wishes for her long life. The royal messenger observes the scene. After some time, Lloyd Frontera returns to the palace, kneeling in front of Queen Alicia Termina Magentano. He reports that they have been engaging in the same celebration repeatedly. In response, she becomes angry and instructs them not to continue such activities. Meanwhile, Viscount Lacona races the horse swiftly and reaches the barony. He bows down in front of Erox Frontera and asks if he has called for him. Erox Frontera laughs and mentions there is no need to be so formal, emphasizing that he is still not accustomed to being called a count. Viscount Lacona disagrees, asserting that with his everlasting class and outstanding personality, there is no one better suited to be the count than him. Internally, he reflects on the irony of becoming the count, realizing that he had previously made fun of Erox Frontera for being poor at banquets and even mocked and looked down on him multiple times. Despite this, he accepts the situation. He reflects that he just needs to treat Erox Frontera well from now on, despite considering him an incompetent human who is only good at being kind. He believes that by making use of Erox Frontera's kindness, he can somehow survive this situation. Erox Frontera acknowledges that, as Viscount Lacona already knows, with the royal order received, there is a lot to be done for the reconstruction of the East. He expresses gratitude and reverence for the tasks at hand. Erox Frontera acknowledges the shortage of manpower and proceeds to make a request to Viscount Lacona. He responds by saying that he should tell him whatever he needs. Erox Frontera specifies that he is wondering if Viscount Lacona could provide a few engineers. Viscount Lacona assures him that he can and asks about the required quantity. Erox Frontera, expressing concern that too many engineers might be challenging for him to handle, requests him to send as many engineers as he is willing to. He emphasizes that this should be done to the extent that their friendship won't be negatively affected. Viscount Lacona is shocked to hear this. After some time, Viscount Lacona mounts his horse to depart, but suddenly he falls down. Arrox Frontera observes the incident from his window and reflects that he has never bullied or threatened anyone in his life, and he feels a sense of satisfaction. Meanwhile, Baron approaches Lloyd Frontera and informs him that the admission of residents for Honey Apartment Buildings 101 and 102 has been completed. The system window notifies that he has achieved a monumental construction milestone, having overseen the first construction of apartments and successfully occupied them with residents in the Laurasia continent. The bonus RP is 700, and the total RP is 4,783. Lloyd Frontera contemplates that now that he has sown the seeds, it's time to harvest. After a while, on the apartment side, a lady shares a meal with her child, mentioning that the supplies include meat and soft bread. The child expresses gratitude for the food. Her husband sits nearby, and she encourages him to come quickly. Despite her urging to eat more, he is not consuming the food and reflects on his gratitude. Recalling his past as a hardworking farmer supporting his family, he acknowledges his current state of helplessness and dependence on others. He wonders how long he must continue living as an incompetent person. At that moment, Lloyd Frontera arrives. People cheer for him, expressing gratitude and questioning how they can ever repay him for his actions. Lloyd Frontera reassures them not to worry about that, stating that everything has been good. People express profound gratitude, acknowledging that he saved their lives. An old lady steps forward, holds his hand, and requests him to hold her hand before she dies. He pleads with her not to say that, expressing his hope that she lives longer than him. Hugging a boy, he encourages everyone, stating that they can overcome the challenges. He attributes their current situation to the collective efforts of everyone present and declares his love for them all. Lloyd Frontera inquires if they are enjoying their meal. Observing Lloyd Frontera's actions, Javier senses an ulterior motive in his interactions with the refugees. Two workers set the table and placed contract papers on it. Lloyd Frontera announces that it's time for everyone to repay their debts, revealing that he has the labor contracts ready. He emphasizes that nothing is free forever, eliciting shock from the gathered individuals. Javier grapples with a sense of uncertainty regarding what is right or wrong. A refugee steps forward and asks if signing the contract will secure them a job. Lloyd Frontera assures them that indeed they will receive a salary and overtime pay. However, he clarifies that from the moment they sign the contract and receive their first monthly salary, they will be responsible for purchasing their own food and firewood. He asserts that he doesn't want to live off others and merely rely on goodwill. Therefore, he requests Lloyd Frontera to read the contract to him. Lloyd Frontera acknowledges that the terms will be stringent, explaining that their county follows a rather capitalistic approach. The individual inquires about the meaning of capitalistic. A lady steps forward, asking if women can also sign up. Lloyd Frontera assures her that there is no gender discrimination. More people step forward, forming a queue to sign the contract. Someone inquires about the nature of the work, expressing the desire to work for their own living. Another person pleads for a chance to work. Lloyd Frontera discloses that they are embarking on a project aimed at ensuring stable food production and granting individual ownership of land. After a while, he arrives at the farmland, contemplating the terraced farmland development project. The plan involves cutting off a portion of the eastern mountain and utilizing gabions to construct terraced farmland. He considers that using rebars will make the construction process easier. In another scene, Bangul lies unconscious on the bed, and Bai Bayang, along with others, stands nearby. Reflecting on the situation, he realizes that Bangul has overworked herself with the apartment construction. Bai Bayang becomes angry and delivers a kick to his face. He acknowledges that he can't continue to push Bangul so hard and contemplates potential adjustments. The scene transitions to night, and the system window notifies that the summoning of creature gacha and 1 gacha is equivalent to 150 RP. He has contemplated this for a few days, but it appears that this is the only viable way to obtain the required material. The message box declares, "Alright, here it comes. The gacha is turning, and what will appear?" He acknowledges that one only lives once, proceeds to the start button, and points to it. Despite considering the message as somewhat foolish, resembling the speech of a swindler, he recognizes its consistent support from Pipodong, Homing, and Bangul. He reflects on always receiving creatures he genuinely needs, given his substantial RP count. Hence, there is no need for hesitation. The system notes that the RP currently stands at 4,783. Deciding to move forward, he instructs the summoned creature, crucial for constructing the wire mesh for the retaining wall to emerge. Clicking on the start button, a portal gate materializes in front of him. Despite finding it noisy, he proceeds with the summoning process. The portal gate undergoes an increase in size, prompting him to inquire about its nature. Suddenly, a substantial amount of fire emanates from it, leading to his frustration. The message box categorizes it as a dud, eliciting an inquiry about whether it is not supportive. The response clarifies that it is merely a messenger conveying fixed rules, emphasizing that the system remains impartial. Expressing dissatisfaction with the abrupt business-like tone, he questions the rationale behind the summoned creatures provided, perfectly tailored to his needs. The message box responds with laughter, deeming him a pitiful fool. It suggests that he remains unaware that gambling involves granting novices some wins and subsequently fostering an expectation for more. In response to the accusation of being a total fraud, he faces the threat of being killed. In a retort, the message box challenges his perception, questioning if he believes the world will make life easy for him. It firmly asserts that life is not to be perceived as easy. He is characterized as someone quick to align with the villain's logic. The message box suggests the possibility of something favorable appearing next. Clicking on the start button, an explosion occurs nearby. The message box intervenes, requesting a moment to be heard, asserting the necessity of attempting things thrice. Undeterred, he clicks on the start button once more, choosing to flee the scene alongside Haming and Pipodong. He questions the wisdom of falling for deception 3 times. Despite his skepticism, the message box contends that he is already being deceived. He lies down, shielding his head, as a colossal creature emerges and advances towards him with hostile intent. Swiftly, he escapes and seeks refuge in Javier's room, where Javier is asleep. Attempting to wake Javier, he responds by going out, attacking, and ultimately dispatching the creature. Lloyd Frontera takes a seat to unwind, and a message box materializes, proclaiming that it was a dud. He acknowledges the message, affirming his awareness of being labeled a lunatic and expressing his decision to abstain from further attempts. The system window informs that the hidden requirement achieved is bankruptcy, and his body and RP have suffered damage due to 3 consecutive duds. To compensate for his losses, he is now afforded the option to select a summoned creature skill. Contemplating the available skills, he ruminates on a list of skill choices. The message box clarifies that the list comprises the skills that can be chosen. However, he is taken aback to observe the skill set, expressing disbelief at the seemingly useless skills presented. As he scrutinizes the screen, he requests a moment to wait for further consideration. He observes a skill associated with spider webs and contemplates the potential advantages of such webs. Considering the thickness comparable to a mesh, he surmises that it would possess more than 3 times the tensile strength and elasticity of steel. Additionally, it would exhibit resilience against humidity and maintain its sturdiness even when exposed to sunlight for prolonged periods. Satisfied with this realization, he smiles, confident that this skill aligns with his objectives. The message box inquires whether he would like to select this skill and proceed with summoning the creature. The required RP stands at 800, and he currently possesses 4070 RP. Confirming his choice to obtain spiderwebs, he proceeds by pressing the Create button. Subsequently, a portal materializes again in front of him, emitting a substantial light that spreads throughout the vicinity. Javier takes a seat, holding his pillow, and remarks that he believes he had a peculiar dream. A worker, noticing his gaze in that direction, inquires about the nature of his observation. Together, they witness something in the sky, causing astonishment as they discern the presence of an angel. Meanwhile, Lloyd Frontera rides atop Jigoming and proposes a round around the county. The onlookers enthusiastically cheer for him, referring to him as Sir Lloyd. They acknowledge the summoned creature's ability to fly this time, expressing admiration for Sir Lloyd's greatness. Lloyd Frontera, positioned on the angel and clutching his shovel, reflects on his expectation of a spider, but is pleasantly surprised by the appearance of a parrotbill. Despite this, he recognizes the benefits of the creature being a bird. Observers comment on Master Lloyd flying in the skies, asserting their trust in him. Contemplating various strategies, he envisions an extensive self-promotion campaign as a means to enhance the loyalty of his followers significantly. He believes this would subsequently lead to increased work efficiency and substantial tax payments, considering it a jackpot. Providing details about Jigoming's skills, he explains that its primary skill lies in acquiring spider webs. Additionally, it possesses supplementary skills such as spreading spider webs, creating a nest, and executing ship bombardment. Describing the intricacies of the spider web deployment, he notes that Jigoming can release spider webs through its backpack. In an attempt to assess its durability, he applied a Monas circle, revealing its remarkable toughness that resulted in only minimal stretching, with the quality deemed perfect. Indicating a direction, he instructs Jigoming to head towards the flat land, intending to create a mesh net using the spider webs. Acknowledging the bird's overall capabilities, he notes its considerable laziness. As Jigoming becomes entangled and teeters on the verge of falling, he questions its destination. Jigoming descends to the ground, causing Lloyd Frontera to lose control and tumble a significant distance away. Expressing frustration, he demands an explanation for Jigoming's actions, to which Jigoming attributes its behavior to excessive laziness. He ponders on how to motivate it to be more productive. The scene shifts to the last night, where Lloyd Frontera sits in proximity to Jigoming. He inquires whether Jigoming knows how to discharge spiderwebs and requests a demonstration of the type of spider web it produces. Lying down, he expresses a lack of concern and questions the purpose of being born for labor and leading a life of toil. Observing this behavior, Lloyd Frontera contemplates the brat's distinct demeanor. Peepodong intervenes, advising to construct infrastructure for society, enhance humanity's quality of life, and reap corresponding rewards and satisfaction. He encourages the creation of a personal mindset, becoming an entity that brings happiness to the world. Jigoming, influenced by Peepodong's words, expresses a willingness to try. Lloyd Frontera reflects that Peepodong's words had a motivating effect, leading to some movement, yet he finds himself in a similar state once again. Peepodong suggests attempting to do a little more together, prompting Jigoming to reflect on his reluctance to exert excessive effort. He questions the necessity of intense labor, contending that the world will progress on its own without their active involvement. Asserting that he summoned Jigoming, he expresses assurance in providing sustenance and care. Lloyd Frontera, feeling increasingly agitated, contemplates the idea of cooking Jigoming. Disapproving of such thoughts, Peepodong intervenes, leading to Jigoming striking him on the head with a tree stick. Despite the incident, Lloyd Frontera acquiesces, acknowledging with a resigned "sure, all right," and offers an almond to Peepodong. After a while, Peepodong undergoes a transformation, growing in size. Attempting to flee, Jigoming's leg is caught by the enlarged Peepodong, who seizes him and endeavors to put him into his mouth. Lloyd Frontera, witnessing this action, is shocked. Peepodong places Jigoming in his mouth, later expelling him and inquiring about the experience, expressing a desire to continue playing. Surprising them, Jigoming states his desire to work. Both Peepodong and Lloyd Frontera respond with a strange expression. Reflecting on the situation, Lloyd Frontera concludes that punishment is effective regardless of time or place. He outlines the plan, with Step 1 involving digging and forming a slope, Step 2 employing Bai Bayang to use a giant sieve to filter out fine sand, and Step 3 requiring Jigoming to lay out spider webs in a mesh formation after the sand has been filtered. Peepodong comments on Jigoming's perceived weakness, leading Lloyd Frontera to emphasize Step 4. Encouragement from the one in charge. He instructs the white cavalry to move in, and they all proceed, each holding shovels. Lloyd Frontera proceeds with Step 5, directing the utilization of sand to cover the spider web mesh, iterating the process until the backfilling is completed. Moving on to Step 6, he emphasizes the need to make the backfilled structure sturdy, fill it on all sides, and pour boulders and gravel into the gabion meticulously. Riding on Jigoming's back to inspect the progress, he notes the completion of the first section and anticipates finishing the entire project before spring arrives. Contemplating the distribution of the construction materials to refugees and expediting apartment construction, he envisions completing everything by the following year, bringing an end to his life of labor. He envisions the prospect of a super-rich, unemployed life awaiting him. Simultaneously, the all-white cavalry utilizes their shovels to dig while Erox, Frontera, and Baron draft the contract paper. The system window announces the completion of Frontera County's terraced farmland construction, proclaiming Lloyd Frontera to be one of the best civil engineers on the continent. This accomplishment earns him a bonus RP of plus 800, bringing his total RP to 4070. Lying on the grass and holding flowers, Lloyd Frontera receives notification of his new title as the leader of those who are tired. The workers also express their happiness, and the system window reveals that the title's region is Frontera Country. Its active period spans 30 years, and it grants 3 CPS. The title's effect will be applied to the designated region for 24 hours, with the potential for an extension, reduction, or change in the time limit based on his actions or those of the region. The title further notes that the effects include a 300% increase in the northern mountain terraced farmland's chance of getting a great harvest and a 200% increase in the harvest amount. Engaging in a solitary game of chase, he observes that it has become slightly more challenging. Contemplating his next move, he ponders over a dice, expressing uncertainty about what to do. In frustration, he exclaims that the situation is driving him crazy. Javier inquires if he finds it enjoyable, to which he enthusiastically responds affirmatively, stating that it's the best and he loves the thrill of it. He adds that anything other than working is preferable. Javier notes that it's the first time she has seen him play since that day. He questions what else he has on his agenda. He reassures her that Sir Baron will effectively manage the construction process independently. Reflecting on recent developments, he mentions increasing the soldiers' wages, leading to heightened enthusiasm and smooth progress in their work. The narrative transitions to a real-world life flashback, where his father imparts a valuable lesson. His father emphasizes the importance of remembering that when everything appears to be going well, one should take a moment to scrutinize and question the situation. Lloyd Frontera is reminded to consider whether everything is genuinely okay, at least once, and to make a conscious effort to do so. Returning to the present, Lloyd Frontera advises Javier to stay up late tonight, as he has some tasks to attend to before singing a lullaby. Javier inquires about his late-night intentions. Lloyd Frontera explains that he needs to verify if everything is truly okay. The system window then notifies that the ending spoiler entails using his CP to preview the concluding scene for this storyline. The required CP for the second use is 40, and it queries whether he would like to use the ending spoiler. Contemplating the cost of becoming a wealthy unemployed individual, Lloyd Frontera acknowledges the necessity of securing a safe future without stumbling blocks. Confirming his decision, he presses the yes button. Lloyd Frontera finds himself transported into the future within a black space. Upon entering a room, he surveys the surroundings, contemplating whether it is his room. In the same space, he observes a future version of himself lying on the bed while Javier performs magic on him. Pondering the nature of Javier's actions, he questions whether it involves massaging his meridian. Witnessing his mana power light up, he becomes alarmed at the intense circulation and expresses concern that his heart might burst. He attempts to communicate with Javier, questioning the purpose of these actions and whether Javier can hear him. Javier continues his magical gestures, placing hands on Lloyd Frontera's chest, but the latter lies on the bed, unconscious and motionless. Lloyd Frontera reflects on his appearance and contemplates an alternate ending where he meets his demise. The future Lloyd Frontera eventually opens his eyes, calling out to Javier, urging him to stop, asserting that he already knows the futility of his efforts, and instructing him to let him live on and endure. In response, Javier starts to tears. Contemplating the instruction to burn what, Lloyd Frontera expresses confusion. Javier takes his hand and reveals that he is not the Count. Javier asserts that he is a hero who safeguarded his second hometown and rescued numerous refugees, intending to present himself to the world in such a manner. The future Lloyd Frontera breathes heavily and succumbs to death. Tiparang, Bangol, Haming, and Jigoming cry and subsequently vanish. Shocked by the revelation of his demise, Lloyd Frontera strives to remain composed, urging himself not to panic and to analyze the situation. He reflects on the minimal change in Javier's appearance, deducing that this event is in the near future. Observing that he appears significantly thinner, potentially due to dehydration, he questions the reason behind it. Javier supports him, leading him out of the palace. Lloyd Frontera reflects on the timing of the event, surmising that it occurs in the spring. Witnessing numerous lifeless bodies on the floor, he is shocked and contemplates a massacre, excluding Javier. Observing Javier spreading oil on the bodies and subsequently using a fire stick to burn them, he realizes that he was referring to burning the corpses. In light of this, he speculates that it might be an epidemic. Pondering the possibility of an illness causing this, he acknowledges his lack of knowledge about diseases, acknowledging that he is not a doctor from the other world. Doubting his ability to halt the situation, he wonders if there is anything he can do. Javier addresses him as Master Lloyd, then corrects himself, stating that whoever he is, these were his last words. He expresses the desire that, once his corpse has been completely burned, he wants him to remember the word empty. Lloyd Frontera returns to the present, contemplating the cryptic message, remembered as empty, and questioning the nature of those last words. Pondering why such a cryptic message was delivered, he has a realization. Considering that Lloyd, who just perished, had already experienced the ending spoiler before, he wonders if the message was intended for him as the observer. This leads him to speculate that it might be a hint from Lloyd, who knew about the illness and its resolution. Walking around, he continues to mull over the concepts of empty, epidemic, and the significant number of casualties. Connecting the puzzle pieces in his mind, he concludes that the future version of himself was indeed a genius for leaving such a hint. After a while, Sir Baron inquires if Lloyd Frontera is referring to the people from Cremo. Confirming this, Lloyd Frontera affirms that he indeed needs as many professional corpsmen as possible. Sir Baron raises concerns about potentially high labor costs. In response, Lloyd Frontera acknowledges the challenge, but asserts that Count Cremo will need to provide them. He explains that the people of Cremo are occupied with cultivating their own lands, and both the soldiers and orcs are engaged in apartment construction. The system notifies that title effects are crucial for debt reduction, and Lloyd Frontera has attained the highest level of financial credibility. This achievement allows him to secure investment funds with the least amount of interest and the most favorable conditions. Contemplating the advantages conferred by the title, he acknowledges that, thanks to it, there should not be any major problems, but the thought of being in debt again stings. Baron inquires about the scale of the construction project he is envisioning. Lloyd Frontera responds, suggesting it might be as extensive as the Honey Apartments, covering the entire Viscounty. He reflects on the formidable foe he faces in epidemic, specifically cholera. Elaborating on the project, he mentions the need for underground tunnels in various directions. Acknowledging his limited medical knowledge, he emphasizes that medical expertise isn't the sole means to combat illnesses. Asserting the necessity for paths for waste disposal, he declares their intention to construct sewers. Reflecting on the cryptic message, "Remember empty," he realizes it was referring to Vienna in Austria. Explaining the historical context of Vienna, Lloyd Frontera details how the city's population experienced an exponential increase during the Industrial Revolution. However, during that period, Vienna lacked proper sewers, leading to the disposal of urine and feces from numerous individuals directly into the Danube River. Typically, such waste would flow with the river, decomposing naturally due to microorganisms. Unfortunately, a sudden cold spell struck the river, resulting in a significant disaster. Lloyd Frontera describes the adverse impact caused by the freezing of the river. The waste, unable to flow freely, alternated between melting and freezing, ultimately leading to rot and polluting the underground water. This environmental degradation was a significant factor in the outbreak of cholera in Vienna. Lloyd Frontera stands on a high mountain, holding his shovel. He surveys the town below and contemplates an exponentially increasing population and the waste that is supposed to be disposed of in the prone river. He contemplates the potential consequences if there is a sudden cold snap that freezes the river sometime this year or the next. He believes their Viscounty will undoubtedly become another Vienna. Grabbing his hair, he solemnly remarks that he always gets more work when things start to relax a little, but he must wait. He reflects on the fact that even if it were a demon and not a sickness that came for them, he would not let anyone or anything thwart his dream of enjoying life. He thinks this even as he sleeps in his bed, confident that not even a demon can hinder his dream. However, he acknowledges that another substantial debt is in the way of that dream. He wishes it were only the salaries of the external laborers that he needed to pay, but when he includes the cost of their accommodations and the expenses related to sending them out to work, it becomes apparent that it is more complex. Holding his collar, he reflects on the corrosive nature of other people's money, the toxin known as other people's money that is consuming him entirely. After a while, an orc warrior observes Emily with Officer Greg, who mentions that he plucked a flower because it looked pretty, but it pales in comparison when put beside her. She laughs and playfully comments on his naughtiness. He recalls the night she arrived in their Viscounty, expressing how he discovered that his heart could become even warmer than the bright and radiant sun in the skies. She laughs again, teasing him for being funny and cringe. He asserts that it would take more than a slap or two to deter him. The orc warrior, still observing them happily together, becomes angry. Another soldier approaches from behind, informing Officer Greg that Sir Baron is looking for him. Greg acknowledges this, telling the soldier to inform Baron that he's on his way. Before leaving, he grabs Emily's hand and affectionately calls her his flower-like girl, mentioning that he's heading off to work. She responds, urging him to come back quickly, referring to him as her handsome boy. Officer Greg walks towards Sir Baron's camp, and an orc warrior calls him from behind, questioning how he could do that. Confused, Officer Greg asks for pardon and inquires about what the orc warrior means. The orc warrior shouts, expressing disbelief at how Officer Greg could do such a thing when he already has Emily. Officer Greg, still puzzled, asks what he is talking about and questions the involvement of someone like Emily. The orc warrior, angered, abuses him and attempts to punch him. However, Officer Greg quickly counterattacks, landing a punch and throwing him away. Officer Greg asserts that a half-assed punch isn't enough to injure him. The orc warrior acknowledges this, recognizing that Frontera Viscounty soldiers are now capable of controlling the power of mana after numerous hours spent in labor work and training. He reflects on how each one of them is strong enough to take on 10 enemies by themselves, but their strength has mainly been used in laborious tasks like shoveling. They both prepare for a fight, running to attack each other. Baron arrives and addresses Officer Greg, noting that he's too slow and questioning why he is still there despite being summoned a while back. He wonders if Officer Greg is fooling around while trying to earn his salary. Officer Greg apologizes and follows behind Baron, with the orc warrior also trailing them. Baron mentions that he's going on a work trip and instructs Officer Greg to start packing his luggage. He mobilizes him, expressing trust in him, and questions how he could mess up before even departing. Angered, Officer Greg looks at the orc warrior. Baron emphasizes that additional work hours are named so because one is supposed to work during those hours. He adds that he doesn't care about what happens outside those hours. The orc warrior walks away, and Officer Greg continues to follow Baron as they reach the stables to prepare his horse. Officer Greg inquires if they are going all the way to Cremo just to call for reinforcements. Baron agrees and mentions that Master Lloyd said he is planning a large-scale project that will have life and death implications. In response, he states that he doesn't believe there is a need to undertake such a project. The system notifies him that the achievements and compliments he has accumulated are producing a combined effect. Lloyd Frontera sits in his room, observing this notification, and inquires about the nature of this effect. The system informs him that he has punished the traitor of the Viscounty, paid off his debts, and provided a home for the refugees without turning them away. Soldiers walk outside his house, and the system once again notifies him that he faced a significant disaster head-on, emerged victorious, and ensured the safety of citizens and refugees within the Viscounty. The system expresses a desire to repay him for the help he has given them. Lloyd Frontera questions the kind of help and how they plan to repay it. The system explains the combined title effects, activated by people who wish to repay his help. Meanwhile, he hears some voices, looks behind, and stands up to gaze out of the window. He observes people outside saying, "Master Lloyd, please give them work. They'll do anything for him." He responds, assuring them that it's okay even if he doesn't provide salaries, and requests them to help him. They express willingness to work for free, solely for Master Lloyd. They declare their dedication to working for him. In response, he shouts for them to be quiet and shares his perspective, stating that the hardest thing to trust is when people do something for the sake of others. He adds that it's easier to trust when someone is acting for their own benefit. He questions those who claim they don't want salaries, emphasizing that he never gave them anything for free. He asks if they even dream of working without payment. He declares his intention to write up a contract and becomes emotional. The scene shifts to Samarkand, where a pigeon delivers a message to Sultan Samar Khan. He takes the message, reads it, and remarks that the scouts they sent west have reported the following about the village overturned by the monster Domino. The message describes a bizarre bird that splits the heavens, a beast that destroys the earth, a creature capable of swallowing the sea, a snake that devours mountains, and finally, a monster whose roars resonate in the skies. These creatures are all being raised there. The message further details that the workers of the village defeated orcs with their bare hands, and their elderly clerks moved faster than the winds. Additionally, it mentions that even the powerful white cavalry has started wielding shovels instead of spears. Both the elves and orcs are using their strength to construct buildings. He reads that if their non-combatants are this strong, then he can't even begin to imagine how powerful their combatants might be. As he reads the message, he contemplates what is going on in that place. Diego sits on a stone while two soldiers are practicing nearby. He becomes angry, addressing them as lowly individuals, questioning if their lowly minds prevent them from understanding his words. He shouts that they need to put all their strength into their punches and demonstrates with his own. He asks why they are stopping, questioning if they are out of their minds, and if they want to see their wives and children starve to death. One of the soldiers punches the other with full force, causing him to bleed, and Diego laughs, saying that's more like it. Lloyd Frontera expresses his approval, and Diego is startled because of him. Diego replies that he always acts scared when he sees Lloyd and finds it embarrassing. Lloyd looks at the two soldiers practicing and inquires about their identities. Diego responds that they are the lowly servants of his house. Lloyd Frontera remarks that having a hierarchy is great, allowing him to have this kind of fun too. Diego, feeling uneasy, says pardon. Lloyd smiles and expresses his desire to join in and give it a try. Diego rejects the idea, stating that he cannot let him fight like them. Lloyd Frontera questions this, expressing frustration and stating that he is asking Diego to fight, but Diego is not willing. Diego becomes scared but reluctantly agrees, mentioning the red corner and the blue corner. Lloyd Frontera points towards Javier and designates him as the opponent. Javier, acknowledging it as a count's order, accepts the challenge.